It was the spin-off show of the Golden Girls, and I'll actually talk a little bit about the Golden Girls as well. So, as we all know, Beatrice Arthur was getting slightly like she was ready to move on, I guess is a way to put it, and the show was slowing down a little bit. I mean, the episodes were still great, but the show was evidently it didn't have the same energy that it had before. So, if you remember that episode where Dorothy almost remarries Stan, I think it was season 6, episode 18, and Blanche is interviewing for new roommates, so they bring in Truby, who is played by Debbie Reynolds. And so the behind the scenes reason as to why they did that was because they wanted to see if Debbie Reynolds would fit in with the other cast members, and it was potentially a way to replace B. Arthur. Now, I think it would have been interesting if they had actually gone in this direction because I think Debbie Reynolds fit in pretty well with Betty White, Estelle, and Rue McClanahan. Um, so I think it could have been a very interesting show if they had done that. And I don't really know the details as to why that didn't happen, but yeah. So then we had the rest of season 6, and season 7 was the final season of the Golden Girls. I'm getting a little confused now because I've recently watched House MD with Dr. House and Desperate Housewives, and those two have 8 seasons, so I get a little confused now. But yeah, the Golden Girls only had 7 seasons. So basically, the after the end of the Golden Girls in season 7, episode 22 and 23, I believe those were the two episodes in the season finale. Um, the show ended, obviously, but then they did a spin-off show called The Golden Palace, and it was 1 season long. Before I talk about that, I do want to mention my thoughts on the final 2 episodes of season 7. I'll say that the they were definitely felt like rushed episodes that sort of came out of nowhere in a sense. And to compare it to other shows, and I know that comparing them to other shows is a little bit too much of an unfair comparison since all shows are different, and the shows that I'm going to be comparing them to are more recent. So, for instance, in Desperate Housewives, it builds up to the last 2 episodes. So they have the grand trial where it seems like Brie is about to be convicted, but then she's not convicted, and then Susan has already planned on moving, and all of that's going on, and they're undergoing a lot of life changes. So it does feel like it builds up. Now, as for House MD, it's a little sudden, I'll say, with season 8, episode 21, and episode 22. They're a little rushed, and the plot goes a little too fast in a way because in season 8, episode 20, Chase decides to leave, and then later in the next episode, they find out that Wilson is dying more quickly, and he is going to die, and then House ends up having to go back to prison, but of course he avoids that by faking his demise, and then he goes off with Wilson, and then yeah, so the ending to House MD was definitely rushed. So my point is, and getting back on subject here, the Golden Girls ending was not as badly rushed as the ending of House MD, but it sort of came out of nowhere because all of a sudden we have Blanche's uncle, Lucas Hollingsworth, coming into town, and Lucas and Dorothy want to play a prank on Blanche, so then they decide to fake their engagement, but then they actually get engaged, and it's just rather nonsensical. And I really like the show, The Golden Girls, but last two episodes were sort of a mess. And then, of course, you have that one brief scene, emotional scene at the ending where um, they all hug, and then like Dorothy goes off to her new life. And then they start the Golden Palace, where they totally move out. They just move into a hotel and manage it, and then they make some new friends. And one of the characters is played by Don Cheadle and a few others. Now, a few thoughts on this. The Golden Girls was about the women being lifelong friends and living together and learning to look past their differences, and they chose their friends over other people and really other opportunities that they could have had in life, and there was something really special about that. But to have Dorothy move away at the end was, I think, sort of defeats the whole purpose of the entire show, because there are many times when they have conflicts and it seems like one of them or all of them are going to move away, but then they end up not doing so, and they work it out. I mean, I know in this case with Dorothy moving, it wasn't really a conflict, but still, it's just like, what was the whole point of the show then? Like, why is she leaving now? Like, I mean, I know why she's leaving, but like, what the heck? And the other part of it, Dorothy marrying Blanche's uncle, so Dorothy would be Blanche's aunt, and that's just very bizarre. Imagine becoming your friend's aunt. Like, come on. Um, but moving on to the Golden Palace, my overall take on the Golden Palace is that it certainly wasn't as good as the Golden Girls, and with the Golden Palace, I think some of the jokes in the episodes were either very cringy, or they just went too far, or they just didn't make sense, or it just didn't land. And I think they went a little too over the top with some of the plot lines, and they ruined some good characters as well. And it just didn't work out. So I think what they should have done was either not have done the spin-off, or maybe they could have brought in a new cast member and continued the Golden Girls. And I don't remember exactly what the situation was, whether the show was canceled or not, because there's been a lot of shows and some of them have ended because they've been canceled, or some of them have just ended, or whatever the case was. But like, honestly, there were other directions to go in, and even with the Golden Palace, they could have done something more. I mean, I guess the idea was creative, but they could have done something more watchable, because the spin-off, the one season was, I don't think it had to be canceled. Like, it wasn't bad enough to be canceled, but it really wasn't that good. And I wonder what a second season might have looked like, but yeah, it was a little disastrous. And I know that Blanche does appear in Empty Nest, and I think Sophia does as well. And yeah, but they do appear in a few other spin-offs, including Empty Nest and a few others. I'm not familiar with those, but yeah, that it was quite odd, to say the least.